there's 3 or 4 things you'll get from this, and one of those is the link. So at the end of this. So now, just quickly, I want to share my screen and make sure that you've got it. Can you see my getting your intellectual property unstuck?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Excellent. You probably see my face and maybe Simon's as well. Looking very cold, Simon. Okay, so let's jump into this if we can. For those of you who are aware of what we do, just very quickly, today's session is all about getting your intellectual property unstuck. And if you're an inventor or part of an R&D team, this project, and your project isn't earning you any money yet, then this is going to be very handy for you. My name is Daniel O'Connor, by the way. I've been doing this now for just on 40 years. I've been working with inventors, corporates, NGOs, all the way through. I've done industrial products, commercial, consumer products, also products and services. So the whole gamut, really. And we've also done spinning in and spinning out as part of our trade sale options that we do. So this webinar, I'm hoping today will be able to...
Ready to connect.
Hello.
Yeah, might pay to mute as I go through this so we can keep some momentum. But the whole idea of this webinar is to give you the tools. You'll walk away from this with some of the tools you need to get and keep your IP project moving. Intellectual property needs to keep moving, it needs to keep progressing, because if you're standing still, everyone is going past you, and we'll explain that. So my concern is focused on early stage commercialization. I work between ideation, which is now we've locked in our idea, we know what we're going to do and how we're going to protect it. And the end of that process is the pre-scale, where we get in front of venture capital or private equity funds. They look at your project and say, okay, if I put 10 times the equity into this, I'll get 100 times the output. Let's see if we can negotiate a deal. That's the sort of position you want to be in when you exit the early stage commercialization. So our key focus is
Ready to connect.
Our key focus is to generate a significant cash flow event for you. So the whole idea is to reduce your risk and build your value. And repeating this will eventually get you to pre-scale. That's when the whole thing starts to get a lot easier. Now, at the end of this, we'll talk about our Inventors program, the Inventors Academy, and then we'll run our Q&A. We've got some of the, I've seen 2 of the 3 people that I have on Q&A today, which they're just some of our members who volunteered to join us today and talk about their problems they had, and it may be that you have questions about your problems you're having and see how they overcame them. Now, just a couple of months ago, these inventors had the same problems you did, and they used this program to get out of them. So we want to see if they can help you solve your problem today. Now, this whole thing, as Q&A, it'll become interactive. So your questions can be directed to them, and we can do that. Okay, I want to see if I can, do I have to press any buttons here, or I can get started. Now, you can see my Getting Your IP Project Unstuck.
Yes.
First question I have for everybody. Always like to start and pepper some questions at you. Don't need an answer. This is a rhetorical. What if there was a 7 or 8 figure business behind that big idea of yours? Would you ever know it? Could you prove it? How would you define it and protect it before it became valuable, or if it ultimately wasn't valuable? So this can be a really hard decision to make. And what we're going to do is make it a lot easier for you in the early stage commercialization by de-risking your project for you. So firstly, the books, all the literature out there that they promote is based on big projects. It's not for small independent inventors or small R&D teams. So you've got Steve Jobs, one. We have Apple, we have Microsoft, Tesla, you name it, all these big companies, and they're not really a good example for you at all. Sorry, I'm just having a problem here. I just want to see if everyone's on board and it's working for you. Are you, everyone's muted now. You're hearing me okay, and everyone's okay?
Yeah,
Everything's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, okay, I'll keep going. My apologies. I just wanted to make sure. I was hearing a little bit and I thought maybe there's something some button I hadn't pushed there.
Everybody else should be muted though.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay, so let's share again. I'll keep going. So the literature out there is really based around universities and large corporates, and they're not going to be helpful to you at all. Now, if we go past those, this whole thing needs to be a different set of skills from what you would use for R&D. Or building your product got you to where you are now. Going forward, it takes a whole different set of skills. And if you don't develop those skills, you're going to be in trouble now, or you're going to end up selling your project for far less than what it was worth. Now, you have, at the moment, if you're in early stage commercialization, you have little or no IP value. Your intellectual property is a great idea, but it doesn't have value yet. And that means that you can't leverage that to borrow money or to get investors. And we'll show you how to overcome that. Most inventors, when they get started, they chase venture capital. And the venture capitalists love to see you early, but they won't touch you. And the reason why is because they want cash flow. I'll explain the 4 things they look for later on, and we'll work through just why you need to get those before you actually go to venture capitalists. Now, most inventors like to commit to patents, and they want to do that as early as they can. And that's sad because ultimately you're patenting something that might not be your final idea, but more importantly, you're starting a clock. If you start on a provisional patent today, in 364 days, you have to pay upwards of $60,000 to convert the patent into a number of commercial countries to get your project protected. And what you don't want to do is do that too early, because ultimately you shouldn't pay for your patent, the project should. Now, the brokers out there who say, we'll take on your project, we'll go and find you a buyer, this is for trade sales and the likes, they tell you they work for success fees, but they charge an upfront, which might be $30,000, maybe $50,000. And when they do that, that's the limit of the work they're going to put in, the effort they're going to put into finding you a buyer. Unfortunately, that's the way the business has worked for the last 20, 30 years. Now, if you're expecting an upfront payment on licensing, I'm sad to say that that happens once in a blue moon, but in most cases you don't get an upfront fee. In fact, payments for licensing can take up to 9 months, sometimes 12 months, because with a license, you're giving someone a concept, and then they're now going to design and then build and then prototype and then package and then put into their own network. And that could take 6 months with approvals and everything else. Once they've got it into the network, you're going to be paid 90 days in arrears for your sales. And as a result of that, you probably won't get paid on cash on delivery, but it's more 60 days after that in terms of the when the bill falls due. So it could be 9 months or 10 months before you actually start banking money. Now, the retailers out there who you've got a great idea, if you've got a consumer idea, they won't range a single product. If you haven't got a range of products, you're not likely to get them. So you have to go to intermediaries, and that means you have to have the right margin to be able to get there. So all of these things is why it makes it so hard to do. If you do this on your own and you don't get any help, trial and error will take you about 5 years. If you buy some books and read online, watch videos, etc., you might get this down to 2 to 2.5 years. If you get someone else to do it for you, it can be done in 10 weeks, but it's very expensive to do that. And what we do is get you done in 6 months. And at 6 months, we know that you'll have enough cash to keep going and de-risk your project completely. So that makes a 5-year option or a 6-month option a choice. And that's what we're going to talk about today, to make sure that you can actually make that choice and also get your project accelerated and always constantly moving. Now, if you do this right, you can fund your project in 4 pitches or less to funders. If you've gone out there and done hundreds of pitches and you've got 16 investors so far and you need another 30 to get where you're going, chances are you're going to end up owning 5% of your company. What we do is we look for just one investor, and we call that a cornerstone investor, and I'll explain that model later on. So what you would get here is the opportunity to just get a top 10 list, prepare for 4 pitches, and ultimately take on one investor who will cover everything you need. we don't go for you to get to profit. We get you to cash flow positive. That's all. After that, you can then start to accelerate as you go. Now, funding and deals reduce your risk, and they also increase your opportunities. The project should pay for your patents, not you. That's important. The skills that you get out of doing this the first time, you can use for all your other projects. I don't recall an inventor who's only ever had one product. So most inventors and R&D teams are skilled at this. They realize it's a talent and they want to continue to commercialize. The more skills you get in commercialization to fix with your, to complement your development, research and your development means you're going to end up banking more money for your project. Now, you can build valuable IP networks with people in other inventors. You can build it with IP lawyers, patent attorneys, solicitors, accountants, you name it. But you'll build up that network, and including intermediaries to get you into retail outlets and big box stores, etc. And we'll show you how you do that. So ultimately, success is not one overnight success. It's a series of incremental deals. And what we're doing is trying to teach you to get the first deal and then get you mobile to get other deals within a 6-month period. If you can do as many as you can in that 6 months, you've de-risked your project, you've got yourself ready. Once you've got 10 or maybe even just 6 distribution agreements or license agreements, you're ready for a venture capitalist to look at you, and we'll show you how to present that. So those deals combined is why VCs want to engage with you. Now, I want to give you an idea of how the business works from a service provider's perspective. If you're an inventor, there's 3 levels that you can do. And if you're a big corporation, you can see some of the companies we work with, they want a done for you. Done for you is where you give the project to someone like myself or any other consultant, and we go away, we negotiate everything for you. We bring back draft agreements. We get those reviewed, sign them, execute them, and you've got a deal, and you'll start earning money from pretty much the next day. That's all great, but it can cost you up to 6 figures to get that done. And it can get done in 10 weeks, which is really great. If you don't want to ever build those skills, that's a perfect solution for you. It's just that it's very expensive. The next way is done by you, which I did explain a little bit. Buy a book, look at some videos, see if you can teach yourself. And you get those 5 years of development or commercialization down to maybe 2 years or 2.5 years. But in between is where I focus, and that is done with you. So you know what you get, you know how it's going to work, but you've got help all along the way, so you're not making those tragic mistakes that will bury your project. So let's talk about the done with you option. That's really the fastest way. It'll get you to cash flow, usually within 3 to 6 months. It'll get you operational within 6 months. The only focus we do is cash flow deals. We do want you to learn, and we do give you the all the know-how and knowledge. We'll give you the knowledge, and then by practice, we develop the know-how from that knowledge. But the essential thing here is getting you to cash flow. The online self-paced learning gives you the how-to, and that's all packaged up online. It's 25 hours of video case studies and how-to on the 6 steps of commercialization. We give you access to, on that same online stuff, you get checklists, templates, case studies, workbooks, procedures, all the script for instance, how to walk a trade show, which we'll talk about later on. Walking a trade show means it's a 7-week process, and you do it for license, distribution, trade sale. You want to meet a target-rich environment. You want to get 6 people to talk to. That a trade show is the best way to do that. And the program starts 6 weeks before and finishes a week afterwards. And we have all the scripts to get the right people, get access to the right people, present what you need to do in 15 seconds, because that's all you get at the first meeting, and then set up meetings and do the negotiation, and you get all the templates and checklists you need for due diligence and everything else. Now, we help you build yourself a solid commercial model. We call that the Ideation and Commercial Modeling Workshop. We spend 4 hours on that, and we start with 244 questions, which blows out to about 500 data points on a mind map. It's not easy. It's well worth it. You've got everything staring you in the face on one page, which you print out to A0 or A1. So you've got the entire map of your project. Now, we also put people in a cohort. The cohorts are 6 inventors or 6 projects together, and you work with those for 6 months. So you feel very awkward at the beginning, thinking, I'm not going to want to share my information with 5 people I don't know. But very quickly, first, you get to know them. Secondly, they get to help you. Thirdly, you get to help them. And finally, the big thing about this is you're at one stage of the commercialization process. Everyone else might be at a different stage. So what you're learning, you're able to apply to their projects just as much as your projects. So you're embedding the knowledge and creating know-how from it, which is very important going forward. We help with that with our weekly meetings that we have. We share wins and we help each other. And I've got some of those people in our cohort, some of our cohorts online today. We do weekly group coaching calls, and at the end of those, we have lessons if we have time. Those lessons we record. We don't record the group coaching calls because it's intimate information and it's commercially sensitive. So what we do with the lessons is we record those and we put them into the library. And if you were discussing something or you want to go back and learn more about your particular problem that we analysed in a lesson, you can see it without all the private information in the recording, and you can download it at any time. It's all there in the library. Now you also get that access to an immediate one-on-one reach out calls. That's important because our projects, IP projects stall or they go slow. And if they do, it's like being in a marathon. If you stand still in a marathon, everyone around you is going past you, and you can't afford that. So what we're trying to do is keep you moving at any time. So if you start to slow down, you run into a robot, whatever the problem is, you can reach out. You get I think the signal is daniel30mins.com. You go to there, you've got my calendar. Within 4 hours to 24 hours or 48 hours, you can book me and I'll be talking to you one-on-one. And so we can get your project unstuck, keep you moving. And and that's enough of the sell side of what we're doing with the program. But let's now talk about case studies. Now, I hope I've got Jeff on the line. I didn't see him when I first got in. But we'll talk about these 3 particular case studies, if I can, who are people in our programs. First, I'll talk about Jeff, if you're here, Jeff. Jeff Zvander, he's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was stuck in traffic half an hour ago, and I hope he's got past that. Jeff is an audiologist. He works on people with poor hearing, looking for hearing aids. And he discovered a problem. And his key premise on this was he built his product, which is called Grove, to fix that problem. And that problem was that 30% of people who buy hearing aids stop wearing them after 2 months. And the reason why is it's discomfort. The inner ear stuff doesn't work, it's painful, it's not every inner ear canal is straight, and some of them need to bend, and it can be awkward. So what he did is he built something almost like silicon rubber, embedded everything in it, nice and skinny to fit into pretty much any ear, will still lock in nicely. And that became a problem because he had then to direct everything to do the behind the ear. There's 2 sections within this process. One is inner ear and the other is behind the ear. And he didn't want to do the behind the ear, and we showed him how he could overcome that. So he did the design himself, and all part-time, and he did outsource to different people. He got his designs done. It was a beautiful product, but he knew he needed millions to get his project commercial. And that meant tipping a whole lot of money in, or going out and borrowing it, or diluting himself. So he didn't know what to do, and he didn't know how to do it. So he reached out for help, and we were able to help him. The first thing we did was our ideation and commercial modeling workshop. So he had a complete plan, and that changed the way he looked at it. The commercial model tells you how to go about it, how to make sure that the people who have the problem get it solved with your product, and how we get from where you are now to where that is. So we recognized the design he needed was only half the product, not the behind the ear. So all he had to do was to modify the plug for that to fit any other existing behind the ear devices. And what that did was eliminated him as competition, because now he was just complementing what others were manufacturing. So also, he didn't need millions of dollars to get started, because firstly, the behind the ear is what needed approvals. So he didn't need to go and get FDA approvals, but also he only needed enough for samples because he was going to do a license agreement. What he found was the industry was very controlled. And so all of the audiology outlets were owned by one of three companies in the world who controlled 85% of the industry. So what he needed to do was to get into those stores. And the only way he could do that was to go backwards. So what he was doing was suggesting to them, you should sell your own product, but if it doesn't fit, you can do a retrofit with mine. And what everyone liked the idea is they're not giving away business to get that, firstly. Secondly, they can tap an extra sale from 30% of the people. And thirdly, they can go back to 20 years of people who've bought these products and stopped wearing them and get that retrofit market. So, and that is bigger than this year's market, if you like. So doing a license deal nationally was pretty easy, and then doing one internationally with the same partner, all he had to do is work out who the three were and who was number 2 or number 3, just like Avis did with We Try Harder. They were number 2 and they had a slogan, we're number 2, so we try harder. Eventually they became number 1, so they had to drop the we're number 2, but that's fine. And he was able to get number 2, put the business model to them to become number 1. So let's switch now to David. David was on the call, I did see him before. So David created his own product called Solo Sheds in his backyard in his spare time. He's a retired or semi-retired engineer. I don't think he'll ever retire. Here in Queensland and Australia. Now, he didn't know what to do next with it, but he had a really good idea. I'll explain the idea a little bit so people get it. Let's just look at isolated, when you buy a shed and you're in an isolated area, let's say a farmer. If a farmer buys a shed, he's going to buy a very big shed, and it might be 12 metre span, it might be 30 metres long and lots of roller doors and everything else on it. When they buy that shed, they might pay $100,000 for the shed. That means they're going to pay another $60,000 to get that assembled and erected on their lot. They have delays because they have to get a team to get there in the right weather. They have to get the concrete down so they can put all the lifting equipment and cranes and everything else onto a solid platform to build it. All of that costs a lot of money and a lot of delays. What David did was have a shed that one farmer could put up himself. He had sleeves that went on top of the posts. He put all the posts up, all the outside posts. He put these sleeves on. He built the trusses across the sleeves and bolted them to each side. And then he built the shed roof on the ground. So there was no lifting equipment, nothing else. And then with winches and pulley systems that he developed, they could raise the roof 3 inches on every one of the posts as they just walked around. And it would take a couple of hours maybe, but they were just winching up one at a time for 4 hours or whatever. And then once they got it to the top, they already had the holes there. They just bolted through, shed's done. They did the same with the walls. And then afterwards, they could remove the pulleys and the winches and send them back and get a rebate from the shed supplier. So you can imagine what that was in terms of a game changer for the world, for the way we buy sheds. Now, the industry out there for sheds is all franchises, and there's about 11 different franchises in Australia alone. They're very hard to deal with because they don't want to change their model because it's working, and they're afraid of any change that's going to cut their lunch. So they tried to push him out. Now, he didn't want to invest his savings in it and build himself a shed business and start competing with these guys, but he knew he could tap it. So what we did is, when we targeted these guys, we looked at leverages, and I'll explain what we did later on. We looked at the existing franchisors. The top leverage we found was called lost sales. Now, what that meant was we were approaching them and saying, the last 6 months, you've lost a lot of sales because the price was right for the shed. The price for the installation was way too much, and they decided not to buy. Some of them may have gone elsewhere, but most of them decided not to buy or build. Why don't you go back to those and see, with our system, you could build that exact same shed, but they could afford to do it now because it's a DIY. And so they had no risk getting on board with this. So now David pitched to 2 parties in the last month or so. both of them said yes, and incidentally, both of them are named Jeff, which is confusing. Now, David didn't split that and go half. He understood the cornerstone investor model, and he knew that he only needed one as a collaborative partner, and that's what he's doing now, finalising all of that. Once all that's done, he'll use the trade show walkthrough kit from module 4 in our workshop on our online stuff, and he'll do that for the USA. He'll actually be able to walk a trade show and get the same using our 10-4-1 model, 10 opportunities, 4 pitches of one deal, and get a license or a distribution agreement for the USA as well. Then he'll use the cashless transaction model, which we've already talked about. He's planned it well in advance. When he did his mind map in his 4-hour workshop, he understood he had to have an exit for him and also for all the parties he's going to invite in. So we did a cashless transaction model as part of his workshop. Basically, that cashless transaction model is where he will swap 100% of shares in the project for, let's say, whatever the price is, might be $20 million worth of shares in a public listed company who's going to acquire this product or project. And they will just, instead of coming up with $20 million and giving it to him, which is really going to delay them a minimum of 1 budget cycle or probably 2, instead, they just do a circular resolution to shareholders. We're going to give $20 million to this guy for all of these shares to acquire that company. We know it's going to give us $50 to $100 million a year in revenue. It's a no-brainer for everybody. So he can turn, he's made a transaction, but he hasn't got cash in the bank. But he can turn to his broker and dump some or all of that the next day if he wanted to. It's up to him. Now, this is Simon. I know Simon was on the call as well. I first met Simon in 1994. How's that, Simon? He was with a client of mine in Perth. We worked together for a little while, and Simon was also working in this company, but he was also a professional sports player. He played professional cricket, and so he moved interstate to go to play other states and get to test cricket. And as a result, I didn't hear from him for a while, but in 2012, Simon came back to live in a small country town called Bunbury, which is about 200 kilometres south of Perth. And this is before we had freeways between us, so it was about 250 kilometres south of Perth. Now, he's a management consultant, and he moved to a place where there wasn't enough people to build a business in. So he needed to reach a larger market. So what he did is, let's do see what we can build. So we did our commercial modeling. This is very early days of 2012. We did it over a series of lunches for months. Simon drove on Tuesdays, I think it was. He drove up from Bunbury, and we had lunch together, and we built our commercial model. And that included the starting premise for Simon was getting the owners out of working in their business, and it was designed around service-based businesses only. And he had a program there which he built out, which was I think 10 months. The coaching program went from one-to-one to a global program. He wrote the book that you can see him holding there. That was the whole how-to. And that book led him, for people who read that book, also understood they needed his services. They joined his program. It was a much faster process, so they could get this down to 10 months instead of 10 years to double their earnings, etc., which is a pretty easy thing when you get the owner out of working on the business, or working in the business, sorry. Now, he built a global business ultimately from his spare room, and he had plenty of time for his sports, which he's still pretty heavily into. Simon has also come back earlier this year, and become a level 2 IP mentor in our level 2 program. And so for some people in some of the cohorts, you might see Simon, and he would run the 6 people and run the weekly meetings, etc. And some people would also say, well, if I needed a reach out call, it could be Simon, because of his skill set's a little bit different than mine. He's much more skilled at cap raise and things like that. So, some people just prefer his style as well, and it's easy. Okay, so we'll have an open mic for those 3 guys after this. But I just want to round off now with a little bit of we're targeting for an incremental deal. We've got to get your your project, if you're going to survive, you have to start earning money. And what we do is we focus you on, firstly, one project, which you need to do. So all of you out there with 25 different ideas, pick one and stick with that one. And when the going gets tough, don't go back to the cupboard and pull another one out. Stick with that one and get it done. The other thing you need to focus on is one significant cash generating transaction. If you get one, you can then rinse and repeat. But in the meantime, this is what we're going to target you from in our program. And this is what you should be targeting if you're doing this on your own. You need to get a modest cap raise. Don't try and raise money to get profitable. Get money to get to cash flow positive so you can repeat the process. So modest cap raise might be $500,000 and it might be just enough to get you to operating and getting your first license agreement or your first trade sale or sorry, your geographic trade sale outside of the area you want to work in, and that cashes you up. Could be a distribution agreement, doesn't matter. So if you get one of those, it's going to deliver you cash flow. And once you've got cash flow, all of your risk goes away and you get far more opportunities as you progress. So the road to success is really just rinse and repeat. You don't have to do the same distribution agreement for the next time. You could pick a different jurisdiction and do a license agreement, or you could do the same jurisdiction and do a different one. There's a whole lot of different things, but as long as you're doing one of those four and continuing to do them, you're developing money and building up your cash flow, and ultimately you're getting to where you need to be by reducing your risk, increasing your cash flow, and then you're ending up at pre-scale, which is where you need to be to get the attention of venture capitalists who will pour in millions to get you going. So now, if you understand you have to raise money, if going to the market and asking for cash is what you need to do now, then I'll put to you that you need to use the cornerstone investor model. You don't have cash flow, so you have to use their selection criteria to raise money, and you have to modify your pitch to be around this. We do a 12-point pitch. It's all part of our templates on our online service. In fact, some of our cohorts are doing these pitches right now, this week and last week. But let me go through what the selection criteria is for any investor, because I can tell you that everyone thinks out of the top 10, let's say, I only want to go to the top 6 because number 6 is what you think is number 1, return on investment. Now, if we stop here and think, I can tell you right now, categorically, there are 5 more important reasons why people will jump into investing in IP, intellectual property that doesn't have cash flow, rather than return on investment. And if you know what they are, you can modify your pitch accordingly. So I'm going to give those to you so you can get this. You'll get it on the video later on, but this is going to be important for you to understand. If you're raising capital, this is what you focus on. Number 5 is easy. It's novelty and ownership. Obviously, nobody wants a me too, and they also want to know that you can own and protect what you're developing. Number 4 is a planned exit structure. Nobody is going to get into your project if they can't get out. This is not a marriage. They're not there for life. They are there until they've made an amount, and you've got to give them a natural pathway out. It could be that they can buy you out, you can buy them out, you both can sell to a third party, you can IPO the project. Doesn't matter what you intend to do, but you have to have a clear pathway for them that they can engineer an exit for. In fact, without an exit, venture capital won't even talk to you. They'll talk about an exit before they get in. You also have to show them that you understand the risks. And the reason why this is important is because a cornerstone investor is not somebody who's come on board for return on investment. And therefore, the way to find those people is from within the industry or the market. They are already in the business and they already understand the risks. And what you're doing is telling them the risks. I know that sounds crazy, but what you're actually doing to them is proving to them that you understand what their risks are in their industry. And if you do that, it's a game changer. They'll understand you're looking after their risks their way, and that's going to be important. If you get this wrong, they will discount everything you say after that. Number two is the commercial model. We talked about the ideation and commercial modeling workshop. That model is how you're going to take your idea to market. People think their value is in their product. I hate to break it to you, your value isn't. The value of your idea is in the commercial model you wrap around that idea. And if you get that right, you're going to make a lot of money. If you don't, you won't. An example here would be your Shark Tank shows. For those of you who've seen those Shark Tank shows, the inventor comes in, tells everyone all about their great idea, their team, their competitors, and how lousy they are, and how much they're going to get 2% of the world global market, and it's worth billions and trillions, and that doesn't work. What the sharks are thinking is, how can I take this to market? Who needs this? How much will they pay? What is their alternatives? What if they choose not to solve the problem and live with it? How much does it cost them? All of this, they're calculating in their brains and quickly saying, I can make money on this using this commercial model, which they don't share. And the reason why is because that's where all the value is. So that if you go back historically through some of the people who've done really good on a pitch on a Shark Tank show, you'll find that not always the best product got up. And that's because the best commercial model got up. And that's why it de-risks a project beautifully. But the most important reason is leverages. Now, leverages are hard to explain, and I'll do a little bit of it through this. I'm going to give you some leverages so you understand, if you're doing a pitch deck, how to do your leverages. But right now, I want to talk to you how we raise the capital for intellectual property. Essentially, you do not have cash flow at that stage. If you do, you don't have consistent or growing cash flow, and therefore your project is still fraught with risk. So you have to hunt for players in the industry or the market, as I mentioned before. This is a critical aspect of this. You need to know that they are going to be somebody who understands, and probably someone who has the distribution channel to take your product. The most ideal would be somebody who says, you're building chips or fries, and I've got burgers. I've got a drive-through. You can add your fries to my burger, and we're going to do really good business together. And it doesn't cost me any more to sell your fries when I sell my burger. So let's get together. So you need to qualify them using leverages, and I'll explain what they are in a while. And then what we do, I give you a template in our online checklist. You can pull out of 14 different leverages, and we check those across each of we take a top 10, we try and get top 10 within the industry, we break it down to 4, and we not only qualify them on the leverages, but we calculate what those leverages are worth. So we can say that if I'm asking someone for $500,000, and the first thing I say to them is, I don't need it all in cash. I want $100,000 towards R&D for getting engineering approvals, but I want another $100,000 worth of rental for facilities. So I'll take a corner of your warehouse or your engineering workshop with your gantry crane and your forklifts and welders and all this. So I don't need to go out and buy all that equipment. I can just use yours, and that's going to be a lot cheaper for you, a lot cheaper for me, and I'll give you equity in exchange for that. So, and you start to calculate the leverages to reduce their risk. And ultimately, you should be able to reduce their risk to nil if you do this right. And if you can do that, they're going to say, yes, it's a no-brainer. Now, the pitch for you is on mitigating that risk, not on the return on investment. Return on investment comes when you're at pre-scale, and then it's easy. But meantime, it's a hard sell. That's why people do 200 and 300 pitches to get enough investors to get their wonderful idea going. And most importantly, if they pitch to a high net worth individual, they get knocked back after, usually they might even get a yes, but they get knocked back after 3 to 6 weeks in the due diligence period. And the reason for that is because those people, anybody with only high net worth individual, is getting advice from people who are smarter than he is or she is. And when they do that, those smart people are going to say, don't take $1 million or whatever the investment is out of the collective pool we use for new opportunities, because we won't see that for, we don't know how long. We're giving it to someone we don't know, and we're working on a promise we can't prove. So it's too much risk. So ultimately, they'll talk them out of it. So working on ROI just won't happen. Now, we offset cash for services and access to people, to skills, to equipment, etc. You can do all of that. We also work on reciprocal trade where they have customers that will buy your product, and you might be developing client lists that they can sell their project to as well. So reciprocal trade works really well. Also, we work on collaborative research partnerships. Now, this is applicable I can give you 3 countries that we can make this applicable to. First, Australia, Canada, and USA have collaborative research partnerships in their taxation IRS acts. And how they work is, if you want me to invest $1 million into your project, instead of giving you $1 million for R&D, I will pay the bills, the R&D bills that you nominate as and when they fall due, and to the total of $1 million. And then I swap the outcomes of all of that for my equity. And what I've done is I've paid for R&D and become a collaborative research partner. And therefore I get the R&D tax concessions or deductions. And sometimes they're better than the average tax thing. Like in Australia, 43 cents in the dollar. In USA, it's 50 cents in the dollar if you use a collaborative research partner. So if I had $500,000 being spent on R&D, I can immediately halve that. So the risk is gone for half of that. So you see how we can mitigate the risk all the way down to nothing. We also like to schedule funding, not do lump sum. So what you're thinking is, I need $500,000. Can you write me a check? No, they have to write you maybe 6 checks, and we spend the money when it's required. And that means less hardship or pain for them, far more affordable. And for you, you're still, money in the bank doesn't help you. It's money when you need to spend it, when you need to pay the bills, is going to be what you need. We also make sure that you pitch a structured exit offer for them, because they won't get in if they can't get out. It's as simple as that. And the pitch then is no longer, give me $500,000, I'll give you $1.2 million in 2 years. It's now, I want a partner, I don't want an investor. And that partner becomes part of your business and takes a big share, but they grow your business very quickly. So the next question I want to pose to you, based around what we've talked about now, is, could a detailed commercial model and a structured action plan help your project reach a positive cash flow in under 6 months? If the answer is yes, worth me keeping on going for you. It should be yes, if you understand how it works. You can do this yourself, no problem, but you need to understand how it works. Okay, so let me talk just quickly about Inventors Academy, and then I'll jump into our Q&A. Our program runs, our next one starts the first week of December. That's why we're on the last week of November pitching it to you. And I've got 3 days clear where I'll be able to take one-on-one calls with everyone who wants to find out more about this. Now, when we put people together, we put 6 members in a cohort, and they are together for 6 months. You get on with these people, you share, you build knowledge, you become best friends. In cases earlier this year, it was late last year, I had one guy who trade sold his project early and then came back in and invested in one of the other projects in the cohort. So that does happen. And one of our guys here today, who's on our call, is in a cohort, and he recognised that one of the other guys had a really good product but wasn't hitting a proper target market. He introduced him to someone who immediately set up markets for him in Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, and Australia in a different industry, the same product. So that worked really well. Didn't get him anything. He just did it because it's part of the cohort. So he was adding value as he was getting value back from others as well, I'm sure. Now, when you come into a program like this, you bring up to 3 colleagues, but when you do the ideation commercial modeling, you can have up to 10 different people on the call. That's no problem. It's usually done on a Zoom call, and you bring in your consultants and advisors as well. The commitment you need for something like this, and it should be for if you're doing this yourself, it doesn't matter. It should be between 4 and 9 hours a week. If you're spending 30 hours a week, you're doing it wrong. And it should be a supplementary thing. You should be able to do most of it at odd hours, so it doesn't interfere with your regular income or other businesses if you're running other businesses. Now, that private commercial modeling workshop is essential, and it's 4 hours of your life. And it is 244 questions, blows out to about 500 data points on the mind map, as I mentioned. That gives you that mind map. It gives you the action plan, which is all detailed out for you. You must attend the weekly group coaching calls, because you're otherwise cheating the other 5 members of their time with you just as much as you're missing out on their time on your project. You also get to book one-on-one reach out calls. If your project is slowing down or stopping, you get to go straight into my calendar, as I mentioned before, and talk to me, book a call, talk to me within 4 hours or 48 hours, and your one-on-one, it might be something private, it might be something that you just need immediate help, and you don't want to wait till your Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever a cohort meeting is, want help. So that's easy. But this is a fair use policy. You can't do it, every day. And also, you can't book a reach out call if you haven't attended your weekly group calls for that week. Just keep that in mind. Now, you also get regular one-on-one tracking and accountability. We use that through a process called project status review. Now, it's up to you as a member to book those, and some people just forego them and don't worry about it. But I can tell you, getting someone one-on-one once a month to go through your action plan and say, have you done that? Has that been done? This hasn't been done. Can we allocate it to someone else? And go through and make sure the accountability is there on all the tasks set for each of the months that you've done. And the way we make this really work is we split the cost. So the cost for something like this can be large. It's suitable for most R&D teams, but for small inventors, it's sometimes beyond the par, particularly if you've already spent money on patenting, you now pretty much broke. So what we do, the entire cost of the program is $36,000. But what we do is we split it up as $1,000 a month for 6 months for each person, for each project coming in. One project, 6 months, and you're in, you're gone, you're done. So that makes it very affordable. And for those who want to pay lump sum, they can get it for $5,000. They get a 20% discount roughly. So let's now talk about what the package has just quickly before we jump to Q&A. That's okay. So firstly, phase 1 is the education. I've talked about the library of case studies we have online. These are 25 hours of viewing, 45 different videos, lots of articles. There's a whole library of articles. I think there's 220 articles available in our library. There's help with market validation. There's proof of concept templates to make sure you get proper proof of concept. At any time, you can go back through the 6 months, because you only need this for about 6 weeks once you're done, and then you're into the second phase. But you can always go back and get your checklists, templates, download any of those downloads you want to be able to use them as you go. You also get off-the-shelf procedures for licensing, distribution, trade sale. So you don't have to, you get taught how to do it. You get help doing it. But most importantly, you pull those templates and start implementing it from there, including things like a due diligence template. So we're pretty pedantic about due diligence, because once you get an offer of, yes, I want to invest in your project, we immediately pass the due diligence across the table. You're ready for it. It's a hard copy, not a thumb drive, because not everyone with grey hair and understands how a thumb drive works. And chances are the person with the deepest pockets has grey hair. And so you want to make sure that you can get their language by handing a hard copy. There's no delays, and you get due diligence done in a week or two rather than 6 to 8 weeks. We also show you the process to spin out opportunities. If they're no longer part of this, it might be a trade sale, might be spinning out to different jurisdictions, so you have multiple sales. Also, we help you qualify opportunities to bring in. If you've got a good project, you might want to look at other projects, aligned projects, to bring in and create a bigger suite of products for the same target market. We show you how to find those, bring them in, conduct your due diligence, monetize them, and then you might bring your project to an IPO rather than just a trade sale. So let's now move to the planning. It's pretty easy. We do the ideation and commercial modeling workshop. I've told you about that. It has a 6-month stepped task action plan. It's fully costed. It's sequenced, so you've got month by month by month. It's fully accountable. You've got names of the people who are going to be accountable for those tasks, not the people who are going to do them, but the people who are going to be accountable. The people I call to account every project status review meeting. You get help with your valuation process. You get help with your targeting of who you're going to pitch to if you're going to raise money. And we also help you with the pitch deck. At the moment, we're going through that. We're going to be doing pitches for one of the cohorts this week. Then we're going to the phase 3. We want to get you from where you are, hit the ground running, to the significant cash generating transaction that you need. And that requires 3 hours of commitment, up to 9 hours at times. Your weekly group coaching calls, your 6 months of peer support with your cohort. And believe me, that is a value you would underrate. I underrated it until I saw how it worked. All it worked a couple of years ago. And the feedback is exceptional. You also get lots of you get your one-on-one reach out calls as you need them, and you never get left alone. So if you need help, you get help, and we make sure your project keeps moving. We also help you to profile the investors with your 10-4-1 process that we use. Getting your top 10 can be easy, but we show you how to use that. Get your 10 down to 4 using leverages. And then we help you identify distributors and licensees if you're going for those instead of investors. Also trade shows that you're going to do. We show you how to fund and implement the process without any excess dilution, so you'll end up owning part of this. And the most important part is we help you track your progress along the way so you don't get left alone. So now, just to wind it all up, I want to give you one home truth very quickly. You can be good at inventing. That doesn't make you good at commercializing what you invent. This is important. You need to become good at both if you're going to make money out of this. If you don't, you won't. It's as simple as that. Trial and error can take you 5 years. You need to reduce it. If you can afford it, getting someone to do it for you is 10 weeks. That is good. There's lots of people out there that can do that. They'll charge you a top dollar, but the good ones are worth it. It'll get done. Okay, so let's check in now very quickly. I want to just ask a question. I'll just stop sharing for a second. We'll go to our chat box. I want to ask you very quickly now, for those of you on the call, if on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, oh, this is too overwhelming, I don't think I could do this, through to a 10, which is, this is exactly the piece of the puzzle I'm missing. Somewhere in there, you're feeling you might be a 6 or an 8 or whatever. So just in the chat box, just put the number in there that you think you're feeling right now about your project and getting to between 1 and 10.
Daniel, the chat box is disabled.
Oh, God. That's not going to work. Okay, well, I don't know why that is. Okay.
Hi, David.
Hey, Daniel, I need to drop, but very interesting. Are you going to get in touch with each of us?
Yes, I will. What I'll do, before you drop, I'll just give you something very quickly. On our reach out calls, we have this, daniel30minutes.com. Now, I'm making that available between now and Friday night US time. Anybody who wants to do that, drop into my calendar, get a time, and we get 30 minutes. We'll talk about how suitable this is. I need to qualify you to make sure that this is going to work for you. So by all means, you can do that. So if you want to copy that before you drop, there we go.
I can't see it.
Yeah. Okay. Now I've undone this. We can put our numbers in there. So if you want to drop your number in of what you are between 1 and 10.
There's nothing in the box about your calendar.
In the chat box, Daniel30mins.com. Do you have that?
No.
I don't know why that is. I'll just find out.
I have a chat box, but it's the host and panelists. And my text can only be seen by panelists. I send a smiley face.
Okay. Okay.
You will reach out to us because I have to drop off now as well.
Yeah. Okay. I'll send this to email to everyone who attended today. How's that?
Okay,
But
great.
anyway, if I on that, we can't really do the exercise there, but we can do our Q&A. So what I'll do is I'll just very quickly go back and give you one little thing that I had from this. Sorry, from the where we were. I just wanted to, if you wanted to, 30 minutes calls. This will give you back to back for the next 2 days I mentioned. Same link to my calendar to reach out calls. If you want to register, I'll give you that link as well. Here's the QR code for my calendar. If you want to just get your camera out for your phone and open your camera and hold that in front of it, you should be able to get my link to my calendar.
I'm driving now. Could you also, this will all be sent to us on email?
Yes, it will. Yes.
Okay, great. All right,
Okay.
thank
Okay, so now I'm going to jump into the Q&A. So on our Q&A, we've got David, Simon, and Jeff. Jeff, are you here? I can't see you. I can see David. I can see Simon. No, I haven't got Jeff here. Okay, so David Sheridan is in Australia. Simon Frayne is also in Australia. Jeff was in USA, but just if we want to ask questions, I'd like to open with a question of people. You can feel free to raise your hand or unmute your mic. That's fine. David, first question for you that I have is, how do you find the cohort system working with 5 other people who are developing at the same time?
Yeah, howdy, Daniel. The best advantage I've found with that is everyone is in the same situation. They've all recognised that they can't commercialise unless they invent. So everyone shares their story, you get confidence with everybody.
Yeah.
Then people share their mind map, then people,
Yeah.
because it's all everyone signs a form and all that. So when there's enough trust gained, then there's sell sheets that are shared. It's a motivation.
Yeah.
It's absolutely sensational.
Okay. So, okay. Well,
Somebody
any other questions?
has a lot of background noise. I can only read the script. I can't hear what's being said.
Okay. Very difficult. Sorry, apologies for that. I don't know why that is. I think someone had their mic unmuted. Maybe we just ask questions.
Randy does. Randy keeps pumping in.
Okay.
No, I'm muted. It's open now.
Yeah, you probably need to mute it, man, Randy, because you have a lot of background noise.
No, how does that sound now?
Okay. Okay, so questions. Who else has a question? Patrick?
Can you?
Yeah, did you get that question?
No, say again, please.
Do you need to have the cohort sign a NDA to join?
Yes,
Or is that all?
we have a one-page promise, and they must sign that. So everyone signs NDAs for each other. That's absolutely essential. We content.
Very good. Thanks.
What do you consider a modest capital raise?
Generally, if you want more than $500,000, you're aiming for more than just your first significant cash generating transaction. We want to pay you back. So, because the more you ask for, the more you give away.
What's interesting is everybody says you need your patent before you can go out for a license, but you're saying don't patent until you kind of have a license. So it's a little confusing.
No, not the case. What I say is if you can get going, you're promoting it, but you have your patent the day before you sign a license agreement. You're under non-disclosure and waiver of rights and everything else in the meantime when you're presenting your product, but you do not because your license is going to be 12 years, 20 years, sorry. Or your patent is going to be 20 years. Your license might be, we usually do licenses for 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5. So
Have you heard of US groups actually signing NDAs? Because I have not. They all say they're not going to.
generally, I find the easiest way is to get them to send you their NDA. The problem with an NDA is when you submit an NDA to a third party, they then have an expense to go and get that looked at by a lawyer. But if they take their own, and you might have some issues with it, but you can at least modify that and send it back, it'll be a whole lot quicker.
At what point would you get a provisional?
Before I start any agreement, before I execute on cap raise, because that gives me 12 months for a dash to cash, we call it, 12 months to get to cash flow positive, because I don't.
Before you get the provisional, if you're going to have, what did you say, an agreement?
You have layers of non-disclosure, non-compete, and waiver of rights. All of those are all.
So you're running any risk with those non-disclosures and disclosing what you haven't filed in a provisional?
You'd have your provisional ready, you just won't have filed it. Some people like to file and then withdraw and refile, but that's the wrong thing to do.
Because your concern is that you're on the clock once you file that provision.
Your 12 months, the clock is ticking, yes. And if the whole idea, if you're confident that you can get it done in 3 months, or in our program within 6 months, that's fine, because then what you can do is apply for your patent and then go and pitch your project, because you'll have the time.
What about extending the provisional to give you a little bit more time?
You can, there's PCT conversions and the likes, but the majority of people, when they try to extend a provisional, is they withdraw it and resubmit. When you withdraw a provisional patent, even if you modified it, that is technically public domain. And if somebody's got a copy of that from you or from anyone else prior to it withdrawing, when it's withdrawn, it's public domain. So I'm not going to give you patent advice. I suggest you talk to a patent attorney about it. It is fraught with danger.
I understand. I was just coordinating the two different, the legality as well as the negotiations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the companies that are open to outside innovation typically tell you that they don't give up any rights whatsoever, and you have to submit blindly to them. So it's very interesting that you're like, you can modify their NDA, but they don't even offer one.
I've been in a situation with a company in New Jersey about 12 years ago, and it was a big deal. And when we got in there, they hadn't signed the NDA. We needed them to sign the NDA beforehand. We got in there, they said, no, we want you to sign ours. They put it in front of us, and it basically said, whatever you're working on, chances are we're also working on it. So we want to reserve the right to keep our own. And it might be the same as yours, which is basically saying, we don't care what you've got. If you
Exactly.
Yeah. So in the case like that, Lisa, what we did is I had to bundle this inventor who was with me out the door. And it was the most painful thing for both of us. He was literally leaning over my shoulder and another thing, trying to get their attention, to keep talking. And they wanted him to talk. But we were sitting in a boardroom of this multinational company, biggest in the world in their field. And they had 6 people in the room. We had 2. 5 of those 6 were solicitors, lawyers. So yeah, we had to overcome that, and we did. What we did is I got him out the door. The guy who organised it was so embarrassed. He took me to the curb. He got a cab for us, well before Uber. And he said, "Are you staying in town?" And we said, "We're here for tomorrow. We're flying out tomorrow night to another town with another competitor." And he said, "Look, can I contact you at your hotel? I might have something else." And as it turned out, he was able to pull us back later on in the afternoon and said, there's a subsidiary of our company that is not bound by our rules. They're in Florida, and it just so happens their people are in town right now. Can I set up a meeting? We did the deal. It's the same company. They signed the NDA. So that happens. It's a matter of we didn't show them, and when we showed that we were serious about it and they wanted it, we knew. When we talk to them about a product as a concept, we don't talk to them about the product. We talk to them about the problem it solves, who has the problem, what it's worth, and how we're going to solve it efficiently and effectively, and price. We also talk about one of the things in the commercial model that I probably didn't explain all that well is there's an element called pricing, costing, sourcing. So what we do in there, we make sure that you've got a margin between pricing and costing, and we also guarantee you've lined up all your sources. So you can get access to all the components or the formulation or the ingredients if it's a formula. So at any one time, your project can get going and you don't have to be hunting for new suppliers.
To get interest, you actually propose to a company that pricing costing model in order to attract attention before you would sign an NDA, because it's actually maybe not part of the NDA, but it is.
No, it's not part of the NDA. What we would do is we would go in there and explain to them the hole in the commercial in the market that we're going to fill and how we're going to fill it and how it complements them. We do talk about their, for instance, their leverages to get their attention. Like, for instance, David did.
So as to bring them about to wanting to sign an NDA.
Sorry?
To hear more. Well, we're doing that for the purpose of making them, leveraging them to sign an NDA, that you're acceptable with, so that you can then start actually talking about your product.
Yep. We dress our best when we go out on the first date because we want a second date. That's what it's all about.
That's difficult too, though, to do pricing costing on a multinational. I mean, how do you get that data in order to know what the profit margins are that they would find appealing?
It's a lot easier than you think. For a start, we go online. Most companies, public companies, big corporations, you go online, go to their website, go to their annual reports, download the annual report. Inside the annual report is the auditor's report. Ignore everything to do with the annual report because that's all spin. But in the auditor's report, it's not spin. If you get a copy of the auditor's report, you can actually see.
I understand. What about a private company?
Sorry?
What about a private company, not public?
Generally, if you jump in with a private company on a license agreement, how are you going to get out? You have to sell to someone else. What you want is for them to buy you, and you don't want them to pay cash. So you want them to issue you shares to take the rest of it on.
I understand, but I mean, in terms of appealing to a private company, in terms of a pricing costing leverage.
Yeah, it can do. We had a case where we wanted to know that this company, we want to know what their formulation was for this product that they had, which around a blending of volatile materials. So what we did is we got a company next door to ring the EPA in their state and ask what are the list of volatile materials they have next door. We have people working here and we want to know what they are, and that you have a right to do. We worked out exactly what their ingredients were. What we then had to do is go to the suppliers and say, how much a month do they buy?
Very good, Daniel.
Yeah. So there's lots of that, but you get
very good.
Shortcuts are all about part of what you get in your cohorts. People have done it before. Why don't you try it?
Ability to get information, like you just said.
Yeah. It's there.
So you don't use any sort of sales sheets to get their attention?
Yes, we do sell sheets, but the sell sheet comes. We don't issue sell sheets. We walk in with sell sheets. So if you walk a trade show, for instance, you probably haven't given them the sell sheet in advance. You hand the sell sheet after you've done a 15-second off your tablet or a smartphone, a 15-second presentation, and asked for the meeting. At that stage, you give them 2 or 3 sell sheets, and they're going to share them out with the other product managers or R&D managers who are at that show. So,
but isn't that disclosing everything before you have the NDA?
We in the sell sheets, we don't actually have material that is private or confidential. You only have your generalist type information. You should be able to drop a sell sheet in a public space and not have your product ripped off. So again,
So
it's
no
not about-
pictures, no functions, no benefits. But
you can have all that depending on what your product or project is.
interesting.
Yeah, but
You kind of have to know, I guess, you kind of have to know kind of a little bit ahead of time in that particular instance what your claims are going to be.
yes,
Or what, I mean, I guess what you're saying is that, I mean, when the non-disclosure, you're going to disclose your claims that they're eventually going to pay for the patenting of that, like the protect the intellectual property. So you have to, obviously you have to have some patent search done to know that your idea is original and novel. But and during the process, whether you do it yourself or have an agent do it or an attorney or a lawyer, then you're going to have an idea of what your claims are, because that's actually what your intellectual property is going to be.
yeah. When we do the sell sheet, we actually twist those so we're talking about the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
What the industry
What's
is, what the hurt is, and how we solve the hurt.
Exactly, Daniel. What's your best-selling book? I know you're an author. What would you recommend as one of your best books to buy?
$1 Billion Napkin is a pathway for that. So
is that on Amazon?
Well, there's another website called danieloconnor.com.au, and it's got all my books on there. A lot cheaper.
Okay.
It's a great book. Daniel, could you, I made the mistake, as you know, early on of getting my own patent. And so could you address what the difference is between before I had the patent and now I have the patent?
With the conversion, you've got a provisional patent, so you'll go further with that when the time comes. And we have
I have a utility patent.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you've gone all the way. Yeah. So now you're fine because you've paid for it. What I try to avoid is you paying for it, but you've already done that.
I know. I've learned that. I learned that in our class in the academy. But I was just wondering. Oh, I've got a terrible hum. I can't.
Yeah, Randy, you've got that hum back again for some reason.
I don't know where that hum is coming from, Daniel. There's nothing in the room. It's totally quiet.
Yeah, it actually goes away when you talk. How's that?
Yeah, it goes away when RB talks, and when you're talking, Daniel, I get it. And when I'm talking, I get it. I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
How's that? Is that better?
I'll mute.
Yeah. So I agree, Jason, that nobody should disclose their patent claims early. But when you've got a patent, you're okay. You've got what you're doing then is pitching the solution, because your value isn't actually in the idea. The value is actually in the commercial model, and that's what they buy. Ultimately, how can we make money from this? And that's what you're pitching. You can make money by doing this and doing that and doing that. And our product or idea or concept or solution will help all of that.
So you must have a lot of in your course. You must have a lot of information regarding how you do that, how you research a company or a target prospect in order to find out why your product will make them more money, or sometimes it's just an asset that they can leverage in their marketplace against a competitor, or sometimes it's just companies that want to get into a particular area of a market that they're not in. It could be a number of different reasons, but your research would indicate to you what would be the thing that would close them, basically, what's going to interest them, because at the end of the day, what they're interested in is expanding their business. So you must have a lot of various ways to get that information, because that's important for closing a prospect, right?
Yeah. It's all online and part of our course, and you can download it. When we do our what we call a 10-4-1, it doesn't matter which of those four you're going for. You have to qualify the people you want to pitch to. So we don't do 100 pitches. We do 4 pitches, but we start with a top 10 list. And then we use those check marks to test and verify every one of those claims that we have on leverages to make sure that we can cost that out. And if we're asking for someone for, let's say, $500,000, that we can discount that $100 million in risk down $500,000 to nothing. And that's the most important part of this.
And it sounds like you're also doing a lot of sort of equity investments as opposed to, say, straight up licensing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, as their first step, most people, when they come to my program, the reason why this is entry level quite cheap is because most inventors have lost their money by jumping in, and they've now got their they've got their patent, but they haven't got cash flow. And so I need to get them to cash flow so they can continue their project.
So your primary focus is on an equity investment?
No, it could be on a distribution agreement. It could be on a license agreement. It could be on a trade sale. One of those four.
Okay.
And if they can do that in 2 months, then their total outlay from their pocket is $2,000. The rest of it comes later.
That's
Very
pretty
good.
Yeah.
But the whole idea here is when you've got, let's say, $50,000 a month coming in because you've done this right, you can afford to come back to my group and the IP mentors like Simon and the likes and say, can I buy a block of 10 hours of your time for you to go and do this? Do the research on that guy and tell me what are my biggest leverages and what they're worth for him. And they can, all that can get done. Can you walk a trade show for me and get it done? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You're sending all this links and everything that you had spoke about, out to us, right?
I will. I'll have an email going out straight after this, which is for the link to to book a call. Those people, once you've booked a call, you get all the links coming into you. If you don't, then by Friday you'll have all the links for the video. We got a little free course gift. And by the way, if you do register before Friday night US time, you get a free copy of this book. So we'll send it to you, a hard copy. So.
And what did you say was the cost again of your program?
It's $6,000, $1,000 a month for 6 months. That's it. But if you want to pay lump sum, it's only $5,000.
Dollars is that? Is that in Australian or
US
US?
dollars.
Or?
US dollars.
Well, that's all the questions I have, Daniel.
Excellent. Anybody else have questions?
Do you
always
guarantee
selling
any
versus
sort of
doing?
I was
Selling.
gonna say,
Yeah, we don't do the cease and desist approach. That's I really don't think you can win that battle. In my time, I've been in this for 40 years. I've only known one case that went to court and won, and I only know one guy who actually enjoyed the cease and desist approach. And I remember him well from, he was from Liechtenstein. His name was Dietmar Schmidt-Benzel. I always remember his name. And his patent was being stolen by just about every watchmaker in the world. And he was traveling around the world to get them, the different watchmaker in a different jurisdiction each time, suing them, getting his money. He got back pay, he got key money, he got it all because they couldn't do it without him. What else have we got? Anybody else ask questions here?
is there any kind of like success guarantee, or is it just kind of individually up to everyone by themselves once they're in the class?
You won't not do it unless you back out. I can't make you participate, but you can't not get, if you're looking for, and that's why I want to talk to you before we take you on. Some people say, I want to get $100 million. Well, no, I don't. That's not part of our program. We can get you on the way to $100 million, but we only want to get you a significant cash generating transaction, which might be a modest cap raise, a distribution agreement, a license agreement, or a trade sale. If you want one of those four, that's what we're targeting. We can do that in 6 months, standing on the heads, because we do it all the time. I've worked with inventors now that have been responsible for more than 3,700 projects over the last 41 years.
What do you define as a distribution agreement?
Distribution agreement, the difference for most people for distribution versus licensing is the distribution is you make the product, you package it, you brand it, and you pass it to someone who will ultimately get it in the hands of a retailer or a customer.
Okay.
Whereas a license agreement is they will manufacture it, they will brand it, they will package it, and be responsible for it. You get less money, but far less risk.
Right.
So I've run into manufacturing nightmares. I'm literally in the process of trying to get back a ton of money from somebody who messed everything up. And I'm just curious, you were saying you have to have your cost of goods and your whole production thing ready. I'm finding that with this whole Trump administration coming in, the import fees and all the crazy tariffs and stuff, I'm not sure how to approach that versus just licensing. And I honestly am at the point where I don't want to kill myself trying to get this done. I just want to get it done in licensing, probably.
I would work on status quo because if there's change, it's change for everybody. So just work on what you've got. You've got another 70 days before the new administration. And so whatever they're talking about may not happen. So
he was just actually talked about it last night. It's like at least 20% for Mexico, Canada, and even more with China. So
I heard that, but I also know there's a free trade agreement between Mexico and Canada, and I also know that it's going to be
canceling it out. He's canceling it out.
Yeah, I mean everybody's in the same boat with regard to that. So I mean everybody in the States that is a manufacturer, that does manufacture in the States, are in the same boat. People in China, people in Canada, where I'm from, I mean, we're all in the same boat. So you just have to work with what you're working with. So, but there's always, in cases like that, opportunities. So sometimes you'll find that manufacturers in the States are in a better position because now they can't import anything. So they're looking for product that have to make that they can supply from inside the country or within wherever they can get it. So there's all kinds of different changes. There's a spot where those changes are and where it could be an opportunity for you.
Yeah. But I'd work on what laws exist. I wouldn't look at probability. That'll affect everyone the same.
But it's just getting those costs of manufacturing now. It makes it impossible. This guy that I was dealing with was supposed to be working with, Korea and all this. And anyway, it all blew up, whatever. But how do I get that now if we don't know what's going on?
Yeah. The short answer is everyone's in the same boat. And nobody has an answer to it. I've got a project that's using gases, replacing the gas in your air conditioner for something that is carbon free. It's perfect gas, but in order to change it, you've got to import this other stuff and put it in. Well, that other stuff that comes in is being stopped by companies like DuPont because they're making so much money out of gassing up air conditioners. So that's a blockage. Now, these guys decided, why don't we manufacture in Canada and bring it across the border? That can work. Yes, it can. But now, is it going to be 20% more expensive?
Right. Well, we're going to try to fight that as best we can.
Yeah. It's just a horrible situation, but the way I look at it, everybody in America is in that same situation. So.
Right.
So there's no way to know necessarily what that cost of goods is to be able to present something in a licensing aspect.
Here's what it is today, and that's good enough. Because it's not going to be that, because economies of scale says if you've done it based on 100 units a month and they can do 10,000 units a month, it's a different story, different price.
And when the patents and all this stuff we were talking about earlier, I mean, when everybody knows that 10% variance wipes out a patent, how important is that to have?
The pricing and costing, it's for you to make sure that there's, usually in a distribution agreement, that there's enough margin in it for a distributor and for a retailer. If you don't do this, you're going to go in and people are going to say, okay, well, based on my margins that I need and my distributors' needs, your product's going to be 6 times the price of your competitor. Who's going to buy it?
No, I'm referring to like the patent aspect of like when you're trying to license something, when everybody knows that patents are kind of avoidable. How important is that in a licensing agreement to actually have it?
To have a patent, it is important. Yes, they're not.
Okay.
They're not totally avoidable. People pick fights. Big companies will, particularly in the pharmacology and med tech, there's big dollars hanging on them. They will try. Some of the food companies will also steal patents, but in most cases, market muscle can be very heavy. But if I was dealing with someone like Yum, or I was dealing with Cardinal Healthcare, I'd take patent insurance before I presented my patent to them. That is an expensive exercise, but it's worth it.
Okay. And what about just typical consumer products, not pharma, not,
Yeah, it's still not worth it, particularly if it's injection molded. Take you back to the case of 30 years ago with flat screen technology. The Japanese people stole flat screen technology. Americans couldn't go to Japan and take them to court because you cannot use the court system in Japan if you're not Kenji. So it doesn't work. So the courts are free, and they're free for Japanese people only. So the only way you can get to court, you and I could get to court, is if we committed a crime in Japan. So, and then they give you free court. But in the meantime, the Americans waited until the Japanese brought the flat screen technology back to America. Then they, that point there, they were able to get something out of it, but not before. So Japanese have 130 million people in 120 million people. That's a good market to build a sensible economies of scale. So swings and roundabouts, but ultimately you'll get there.
And can I just butt in on something?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was listening to a lot of Randy's questions, and I think I need you to put the right words to this, but it's hard for them to understand how valuable the mind map is, because all your costs, all your problems are in there. And the way I've had to deal with things is, if there's a new problem, you put that into the equation, because at the end of the day, I can't stress enough, the whole gig is what we're doing is solving problems and marketing it. So we're starting with the end in mind. So if our whole gig is to start with the end in mind, we're getting a result. If there's a problem shows up, we just deal with it in the mind. It's not. I know it might sound hard, but it's not hard if you follow the process. Daniel, can you highlight that a bit?
Yes, the value is in the commercial model, not in the product, not in the idea. It's always been that, but a lot of people can't, because it's your baby, you've developed this from scratch, you're proud of it, and you have every right to be proud of it. But if you understand one thing, walking away from this, that doesn't have value. The commercial model makes it valuable. And if you have a poor commercial model, you might be famous, but you won't be wealthy. And if you don't get wealthy out of the first idea, you won't make it to the second idea.
Somehow I feel the microphone just dropped.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So Randy, I had to mute a little bit there, but okay. I think we're about to head off now. Thank you very much for everything. I'll have everything come out. By all means, if everybody wants to join me at make a booking, talk to me, confirm your project eligibility, and then I can jump you into our start next month. We are there's my link. That's the reach out calls number, and we can use that as you people can use that for the next 3 days. So jump in. Almost 18 hours a day, I'm online, ready to take calls and be able to qualify people. In fact, I've got one ready to go now. So I have to keep moving. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. I'll send out the link to the recording, and stay tuned for next month. Thank you. Thanks, David and Simon and Jeff, if Jeff made it. I appreciate you coming along. Okay, bye, everybody.